Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Beisman, and I'm an MBA student at MIT Sloan. It's my pleasure to introduce our panel, Rewriting the Playbook, with Maverick Carter and Jason Robbins. Our panelists today are Maverick Carter, Co-CEO at Fulwell Entertainment, and Jason Robbins, CEO of DraftKings. Our panel will be moderated by Eben Novi-Williams from Sportico. The panel will run for 40 minutes, and we will leave 5 minutes at the end for questions. Please submit questions via our Cadence app. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eben.
All righty, thank you, Adam. Fellas, I'm excited to be up here with two very accomplished folks who I think 5 years ago I maybe would have said were in totally different businesses. Now I feel like you guys are, correct me if I'm wrong, potential competitors and also potential collaborators. Is that how you guys see
I wouldn't look
things?
at it as competitors.
Yeah, I wouldn't say competitors. We're collaborators, partners, friends. But yes, we are in the same sports, entertainment, content space. Obviously, he's also in betting in a big way.
Yeah, an NFL owner told me once that everyone's in the content business.
Correct.
Whether you own the team, whether you own the betting company,
It
whether
is
you own
true,
the
but I will
production.
say one of the things that I think is unique and special about the type of content that you see with fantasy and betting is it actually doesn't take away audience from the sports content. If anything, it actually adds audience to the sports content. And I think vice versa is true too. Sports content, like what Mav's company does, engages fans and makes them more interested in things like fantasy and betting. So, I mean, that's what, but you're right. I think if you're creating traditional content for passive viewing experiences, but the second screen content works complementarily, is complementary to the type of content you're talking about.
I use the term second screen to talk about your business, certainly, Jason, for years. Now I almost feel like the second screen is the first screen in some ways, right? And I'm sure you feel that way too, Mav.
Yeah, it's absolutely the first screen in my house. I have a 16-year-old daughter who I actually am going to do it as an experiment, but I think I could take the TV off her wall. She would not notice. I don't think forever, definitely it would take months. I have like an app at home where I can see all the things that are on in my house. And we've lived in the house 4 years. Never once has her TV been on.
So just phone?
Her Sonos is always on, playing music, and I can see what music she's playing. I don't think she knows that, but I can see what music she's playing. But she's watching stuff, but not on the TV screen. So to your point, this is probably phone, laptop, iPad, probably watching 3 different things, but definitely not on what you would call the first screen.
Am I correct in assuming that she follows sports, but maybe isn't sitting down to watch a 3-hour NBA game or a 3-hour NFL game?
Yeah, she would be able to tell you, what outfit SGA had on last night, or who he's dating, or,
Important stuff.
yeah, important
like that.
stuff. She probably wouldn't know what team he plays for.
Interesting. Does that, Jason, does that trend worry you at all? You can make a line on what the Lakers are going to do against the Mavericks. You can't make a line on what SGA is going to be wearing, or maybe you can. Maybe that's the future here.
I mean, I think that not everyone is going to be a sports fan, but the more people are engaging with sports figures and those brands of those, sports figures are developing off the court, off the field, I think that does ultimately create more fandom of sport. Not everybody maybe, but I think some people get into it. But there's no real downside to us if people are following athletes outside. It's only upside. And I think for the sports fan, I think our product actually fits really well with the trends Mav's describing. I mean, people are on their phones more than anything else, and that's the primary channel that people use our product on. So I think we're in a good place from that standpoint. I do think people still want to watch the games, but a lot of people are following the games on their phones, and if you're out and about, that's just fine. And so, we're trying to create as much of an experience as we can without showing the game, where people feel like they can still follow along and make bets and play fantasy.
I imagine this is not a stat you have, Jason, but what percentage of your bettors do you think are actually watching live the game that they bet on?
I mean, I don't know. If you asked me to take a wild guess, I would say under 50%, but I don't know. I just think a lot of people, they want to make a bet for the team they're following on a more regular basis than they have time to devote 2-3 hours, whatever it's going to take to watch the game. Doesn't mean they don't watch parts of the game. Doesn't mean they're not following the team or the game on their phone while they're out having dinner, something like that. But I think a lot of people do experience the product that way.
I guess I'd ask the same question to you, Mav. What percentage of the people consuming your content do you think are also watching live basketball, or do you think they're just following?
I would be taking a wild guess. Like we make Starting Five, which is a big NBA show for Netflix that we're shooting season 2 now. You know, there will be episodes of that viewed by more people than watch a game. So I would be taking a wild guess, but I would say it may be even lower than what Jason said, under 40% or something, that are more into the stories and the human stories of sports and not necessarily following the wins and losses of a given team.
I know, Jason, live betting is a priority of yours. A lot of that is kind of small micro moments. Mav, I would assume you guys have done full-length movies, you've done bite-sized content. Am I correct in thinking that your future is more towards the smaller than it is the bigger?
We do a bit of both. I mean, we do, you know, we produce the Grammys, we do big live things for music also too. But we are really into I don't know how you're defining smaller, I would maybe define it as shorter form. We already do a lot of that through Uninterrupted, our athlete channel. And I think that is where you know, that's where people are, and that's viewing habits. So you have to provide them the content that they want and in a way that serves them and serves the story. But these days, it's very normal for people to watch even longer form things on a smaller device.
You guys, I know, have known each other for a while. Last year, LeBron signed a deal to become a DraftKings, part of the DraftKings family. Walk me through how that happens. Who goes to who first, and what do those negotiations look like?
I think you called us, or did we call you? I don't remember.
I've known Jason.
We talk all the time.
Yeah, we talk. Yeah, before that.
Where did the
that deal was
relationship
last
start,
year,
by
but
the
I've
way?
probably known you 10 years.
At least 10 years.
Maybe 10 or 11 years. I think it started when LeBron was making picks, NFL picks, on his own. He just started doing it. Just like he watches every single NFL game.
Was that your idea?
Basically like the rest of the world, the rest of the country. No, it was not my idea, it was his idea. And he started doing it and engaging with fans and talking about it. And then I think Jason and I might have we talk all the time, as he said, we're just having a conversation. It just came up. Like, well, what if we did that as a part of DraftKings? Well, what would that look like? How we do it? How we bring it to life? And it just built on top of that. And then this fantastic team got involved, and we made a deal, and it's been great.
Yeah, it was really when I mean, I forget who called who first, because like Matt said, we chat all the time, so probably just came up. But the start of it was the NBA said that NBA players were allowed to now do deals with betting companies as long as they weren't promoting the NBA. And I knew from talking to Mav that he was in a fantasy football league with LeBron, and LeBron was really into fantasy football and football in general. And we saw he was making the picks, so we thought, well, you know, what a great idea to bring that together. One other comment I want to make about your previous question too, I think is interesting, is because you mentioned short form content. I think actually a lot of younger people these days, it's not about short term as much as it is not traditional movie television. My kids will sit and watch 2 to 3 hours of people playing video games straight without blinking. I mean, on YouTube, right, or something like that. So it's not like they need a 5-minute video. I mean, they'll watch the whole thing and not break concentration for a moment, but try to get them to watch a TV show or, you know, a full-length game, and it's harder. And so, you know, I think it's an interesting comment, less on the form or on the length and more on the form of content. And I think that's what's so interesting about what Maverick's doing is, you know, they have all sorts of different lengths, but they're capturing events and things that are interesting to people and that aren't just rerunning the same thing over and over again. And I think that's more of the thing with today's, you know, younger generations is they get tired of the same thing over and over again. They're used to constant variety. They're used to new things.
Mav, when you're negotiating a deal like the DraftKings one, money obviously is a big factor. What else are you looking for?
They didn't want any money.
Yeah, shocker, yeah.
Money is definitely part of the consideration set, but it's actually a bit further down the list than you think. First is people, like who are you literally going to be in business with, because that matters as much as you can know them. Get a feel for the people, because shit happens, shit comes up, so you need to be able to have someone across that you can call and say, hey, this is going on, this happened, and we need to push this. We thought this, but turns out it's actually this. You know, we thought we were gonna, when we started this deal, we thought we were gonna go right, but turns out we need to go actually a little to the left. So you have to have people who you can work through those things with, because things do pop up in any and all businesses and any and all deals. And then it's more about kind of what role are they willing to let us play and what we produce as far as whether it's, in this case, it's advertising content plus social content. So like, is it really going to be a collaboration so that it really serves all parties involved and not just one way? Because as everyone knows, LeBron has done fine financially, so he's not going to take money just to, if it's not going to really help him too. And then eventually you get the money, but all those things have to line up first.
So I live in New York. Earlier this week, I opened my DraftKings app, looked at the promos, because that's the way I gamble. And there was an odds boost on LeBron for points or rebounds, whatever you want to do. Is that part of the deal? That the kind of thing that is included in this in addition to the
I think they would do that probably.
Yeah, we would do that
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, I think they would do that anyway.
Yeah,
I assume.
you are correct. We would do that anyway. And remember, we can't promote basketball stuff and specifically with LeBron either. So, but you know, those are things that just people would be interested in general. I do think you know, people now know that LeBron is associated with the brand. So all things, you know, considered, maybe we lean a little more that way, but we would be doing that anyway.
And for that example, it's obviously great for LeBron to have more people rooting for him. If you click that promo, right, you're more likely to watch the game. You're more likely to root for him to get there. There's also another side of that, Maverick. I've talked to a lot of NBA players who their DMs fill up when people who bet on them don't hit, right? How do you balance, or what's your advice for players that you work with in terms of how to balance the obvious promotion that comes with this with also the social media and the fan downside?
Yeah, well, I only work with one player, fortunately. But, I mean, you got to have thick skin and ignore it. You're going to get, you know, even if there's no betting on the game and you missed a shot in the game, you're going to get the same type of noise. You're going to have thick skin and know that comes with the job. And if you succumb to it or it bothers you that much, you're probably in the wrong line of work.
Jason, we saw this year with DraftKings the volatility that NFL outcomes in particular can have on DraftKings business. I'm curious, are you sweating out on Sundays? Are you watching scores in the same way that some people watch stock tickers? What does your Sunday look like given how important NFL is?
Yes is the short. So I love betting personally, and I used to bet all the time. And what I would find is I would always be on the side of the public because I just bet like most mainstream people do, which then means I'm on the opposite side of DraftKings. And it was terrible because I'm like, either I win my bet and DraftKings loses, or I lose my bet and DraftKings wins. And so I for a little bit was like, do I just bet? And then I realized I don't need to bet. I already have all the action I want.
The action's already there.
And so now I sit down actually on the couch, and my kids even ask me, like before we put on the NFL games, like, all right, who are we rooting for today? And I'm trying to explain
The Jets.
this team, but it's only if they win by this many points. And my wife looks over, she's like, are you really teaching point spreads to my children? And I was like, they got to understand the business.
No, it's math. It's not
it's math.
Yeah,
It's math, exactly. So, you know, I kind of stopped betting. I still occasionally do, but I feel like I got all the sweat I need. So to answer your question, yes. Especially, it's actually fun. It gets a little stressful towards the end of a quarter when you're like, you know, bad week or two. But the nice thing is I think the market has gotten accustomed to understanding that there's going to be sport outcome variability. And so that's not as much of a thing anymore. But for a little while, it would always get nerve-wracking towards the end of the quarter.
Bad season, good Super Bowl. In as much detail as you can, how good was the Super Bowl? The underdog won. A lot of the player overs did not hit.
I mean, the important thing was Saquon Barkley and Travis Kelce didn't score. So, you know, that was actually more impactful to us than the game outcome. The game was pretty evenly split. There was a lot of Chiefs betting during the game, so that did help a bit when the Eagles obviously held on and won. But you know, really a lot of people that bet the Eagles parlayed it with a Saquon touchdown. So the fact that he didn't score was huge for all those parlays. So it was a good one, but you're right. We had a really tough run in Q4, so it all evens out over time. But nice kind of to get the Super Bowl, because I always say, like, if somebody wins big on the Super Bowl, they're more likely to go, you know, do something else and come back for NFL. If they win big on week 7, they're going to keep playing. So, you know, all things being equal, we'd rather have the winning earlier in the season.
It felt like for a while, Jason, that your business was just a rush for market share. New states were coming online. You were spending a lot to advertise in those states. Now we're getting to a point where some of them are slightly more saturated. It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, you have more time for product innovation, for maybe M&A. What do you feel like right now in terms of what you're able to do with a little bit of breathing room that maybe didn't exist if we were having this conversation in 2021 or 22?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is really focusing on the internal piece, meaning the team, the way that we operate, some of the longer term efficiency initiatives like AI that we haven't really, hadn't, I should say, really until a couple years ago, spent as much time as I thought we should on. So it was a lot of like focusing internally for the first, I don't know, almost decade of the business. First 9 years of the business, I didn't go more than 7 months without raising money. So I was just constantly out there raising money. And when finally we had a path to profitability and we knew we didn't need to raise money anymore, the first financing we did was actually, we didn't need it, we just did to get established in the debt markets. We just did a small term loan a week or so ago, and that was the first financing we had done since early 21. So to put that in perspective, it was like 4 years later after not ever going more than 7 months. So that's given a lot more breathing room to focus on like, how do we make sure that we have the absolute best team in place and that we're operating in the best possible way for our customers.
Hearing that, Mav, how do you feel about where Spring Hill and all the things that you're doing are in their life cycle of raising money, of feeling comfortable and really trying to innovate?
Yeah.
Easy for him to raise money. He just shows up. They throw money at him.
Bullshit.
Yeah, because you've been successful before. I was fighting. But you got a lot of you got a few things going on that people want to throw money at all the time now.
Raising money can be traumatizing.
Yes.
To find a word, it could be traumatizing. If you can, as a company, if you never have to or raise once and never raise again is the position you strive for, right? And you want to be, but then you want to grow and you want to do things and you want to change. We've been fortunate now to raise $300 or $400 million into our company. That's been great. We are lucky we've gotten great partners who believe. They're not always easy because they shouldn't be, right? I had a board meeting yesterday morning, which was great. But, going out and raising money every 7 months that's brutal. I mean, that's like a boxer having a fight every 7 months. There's a reason boxers fight once a year. That's a lot. That's hard. So I would never want to be in that position. And Jason, he's a very resilient guy and a very resilient company to go through all that. And plus what they went through that year with ESPN and all that. And it's just an amazing what DraftKings has become when you think about the resiliency of the company. We have not had to raise that many times. We've raised 3 times. And then we just went through a merger where we raised kind of a 4th time. We put $50 million more into the company just throughout the merger. But I think, if you got a great company and you got to, as they say, if you have an opportunity in front of you that you can clearly articulate to investors, to partners, and they can get it and see it and feel it, and they believe you can execute it and you have the team to execute it, then it is worth it. It's traumatizing, but it is worth it if you have a clear vision and a clear path to executing it and a team that can help you get there.
I want to ask you, Maverick, about player ownership of data. Jason's company pays a lot of money to data companies and leagues for access to live data about what's happening in NBA games.
Correct.
You can say that the players share in that because they're sharing in some cut of league revenue. But do you feel like a player like LeBron, whose speed on court or his stats, should he share more directly in the monetization of his data, or are you fine with that going through the league to media companies?
Well, I can't answer that question without answering a broader question, which is the way sports are set up in the fact that, we could pick it apart and say, do players share in when DraftKings buy data? I probably could argue both sides of that, but the bigger fact is sports is the only business in the world. I was just having lunch with my partner, Sam Kennedy, who they did PGA, and PGA is the first one that did it, and it's going to happen, it has to. But sports is the only business in the world, and Jason and I were having this discussion last week, where you can draw a line directly from a given individual to enterprise growth, not 100% of it, but some part of it, and they don't get to participate in it. So that's really the bigger point. Like, if LeBron could monetize his singular data is not worth nearly as much as all the players' data combined, and one athlete's data is not going to be worth that much to him. What's worth it to him, or an insurance company, health, whatever companies that are mining data, is an aggregation of a lot, and the players should be able to, athletes should be able to own a piece of that. But that is a part of the whole enterprise, is how I would answer that question.
I use this data, this stat a lot, but LeBron's Instagram followers are 160 million or something like that, and the Lakers are 22 or 23 or something like that, which I think underscores your point about how.
Well, it's not necessarily about LeBron having more influence or bigger or more famous than the team. It's not even about who's more famous. It's just that they participate in growing the enterprise. So if you and I, if all three of us, if Jason hired you and me today to be head of HR and the CFO, part of our compensation package would be whatever the hell you call them at DraftKings. Some people call them RSUs, some people call them options. Am I correct? You have
That's
a great,
most of it,
You have
yeah.
a great CFO, and so we're
No,
not
you're
doing,
right.
we're
Most
not
of their
taking the
comp is
jobs,
that.
but most of their comp is that. Any company,
Sure.
that is your comp, and most people know that's how you achieve real wealth, because getting paid is ordinary income that you pay half to the government. So, and nobody can argue the other side of, do players contribute to, or athletes contribute to enterprise growth?
So this has been a priority of the NBPA recently. I know that the NBA and the recent labor talks did carve out the opportunity or potential for players to share in the equity growth of the league. In your mind, what does that actually?
I don't even know what that means. I didn't
That's what I'm
study
asking.
It.
What does
so
it-
if you
what
ask
does
me
it
something
look
about
like?
it, I have no fucking
Yeah.
idea,
Okay.
because it's phantom and it's not going to make any sense. Because first off, the NBA is, or NFL, and all, it's not a singular vehicle. So you can't. So what am I? What, like, and the Chicago Bulls can't give just their players some of it. So I'm being a bit sarcastic, but I'm just saying I literally I didn't study it.
Yeah.
Because it's not real, and it's also, it's 10 billion later. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be like if I worked at DraftKings from day one, and then you gave me equity like when you were worth like 10 billion, you're like, oh, now you participate. It's like, oh, what about the first 10 billion I was here for? You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no. The players
what I mean?
that are there
Totally.
now, you brought up like how much value is Steph Curry added to Golden State, and how much value.
Yeah,
it's definitely a good question.
I don't know. We could argue how much value he contributed, but we know there's been value creation, right? The team was 400 million, and today their valuation is somewhere in the 6, 7, 8 billion. How much of that is he responsible for? I don't know, but something.
This is maybe a good transition or time to talk about some reports came out a month ago that you're helping advise a group that may be trying to build a competitive basketball league, maybe even a challenger to the NBA. Is the structure that you're talking about built in at the ground floor something that
It's
that
not
group
about,
is looking
it's not
at?
about being a competitor or a challenger. It's about being an option. There should be another option. There is other options in every business, right? There's DraftKings, there's FanDuel, there's Nike, there's Adidas. There's always options. So and we are Americans, so therefore we are capitalists. So in capitalism, you compete and there's options. So it's not about being a challenger, a competitor, or putting the NBA out. I love the NBA. It should always exist and always be around. But there should be another option that is better suited to serve the global fan base. We're Americans. We're sitting here in Boston, right? So we think in very American ways. But there is 2 billion or 2.5 billion fans around the world. Only 100 million basketball fans live in America. There's roughly 2.5 billion fans outside of America that should also have a version of top-level basketball. That's the point.
I imagine, Jason, you're fairly agnostic to if there's more leagues pop up that are popular and
More
people are rooting
sports
for them.
viewership, more people
More
watching
events.
sports is good for
Good for
us.
him.
So we love any kind of engagement that can be created with sports.
By the way, they would do great in something like this. More sports, bigger events is great for betting.
Great for betting.
Netflix had 2 exclusive NFL games this year. the most watched sporting event on Netflix this year was neither of those games. It was the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight by a wide margin. When you guys look at that, these events that don't have really existing IP, the IP is really in the athletes themselves, and that's basically it. Do you feel like there is more of a future for events like that, where outside of the traditional structures, athletes themselves are the ones who are driving most of the value?
It's not even about athletes themselves driving most of the value. It is the world has changed, and every business, when the world changes, change comes, and we have sports that are built on models that started in the 50s and run by extremely smart people, extremely thoughtful people, but they have business models that they're kind of stuck into, and there's new models that should exist to take advantage of. When you talk about Netflix, I always say to people, well, Netflix is a great company. I love Netflix, but Netflix didn't invent the internet, and they didn't invent movies. They just went, oh, the internet is here. Movies are still being made. Jason wants movies in his house. He already has the internet in his house. So what if we just gave him movies over the internet into his house? And that's how I'm simplifying it, making it sound very simple, but that's what they did. And the fact of the matter is, it was just a new model. Movies were already existing, but the movie studios were still saying, oh, you should go to the theater and pay $7. And Netflix went, well, maybe they'll pay $13 a month, and we just pipe it right into their house. And we all went, hell yeah.
The Tyson-Paul match, Jason, you were able to book in some states and not others, is that right?
I mean, most states had it.
Most states had it.
And we sponsored it, which is great. I mean, to your point, it was unexpectedly one of the biggest events. Outside of the last two Super Bowls, it was our best customer acquisition event we've ever had.
Wow.
So to put in perspective. I think like anything that engages people, sports is an example, but anything, things that have great narratives, that are narrative driven, they drive more engagement. And I think there was a strong narrative there, and they did a good job promoting it. But sometimes you have something like that just, and it's hard to really pinpoint why, but something that just hits this like viral sort of inflection point where all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, I gotta watch that. All my friends are watching it. I gotta go. And it did. And so it was like, I actually saw it happening. Like as the day unfolded, people were like, you're gonna watch a Tyson fight, you're gonna watch a Tyson fight, and more, friends texting, things like that. And by the end of the day, everyone was watching the Tyson fight. But I don't think anyone, I mean, Netflix included, could have predicted that. The bandwidth, they could barely keep the thing functional. It was so heavy. You hit lightning in a bottle like that once, maybe every few years at best. So we'll see if there's another one of those. But I do think that the lesson, to your point, is that having a great narrative and being able to actually manufacture an event, you don't even need an existing league. You just need a great narrative and people to help carry that narrative, and that's enough.
And for a company like Netflix, I would imagine not too many people are rewatching those NFL Christmas games, right? They happened, that's it.
But they'll
I would
rewatch the
imagine
fights.
they'll rewatching the Tyson-Paul fight, right? So if you're a streaming company, that's value, right? It's the long tail that a lot of sports don't have, but events like this that you're talking about actually do have.
Absolutely.
So I want to get to some questions from the audience, but before we do, I want to ask both of you, one thing that I see kind of parallel in both of your careers is that you both started on your tracks very young, right? Not in the traditional cycle. I'm curious now that you guys are where you are, how you think about the path that you guys took. Jason, you started DraftKings from a townhouse nearby. Mav, obviously you dropped out of college to go work at Nike. Just thinking about it, I'm curious, looking back at your careers, where if there's moments that stick out or just pieces of advice that you got along the way that helped you.
I don't like to look back much.
Fair.
As humans, we're built to look forward, so I'm always thinking about tomorrow. I mean, I love, I always tell people like for me, it's just like my grandmother gave me my name and she really gave me the name Maverick, so I have to always go for it and try new shit and fuck with shit is just kind of how I'm built. She really gave me that name. So I think that feeling is always what pulls me forward and makes me feel good, is like going for something and really trying something. And I think Jason can speak to this too. It's like, it's a really beautiful feeling to have an idea in your head and then see it come to life. Everybody, we got to earn a living and make money, but that's a much better feeling that you have an idea in your head and see it come to life. So I always, as many ideas as you can think and as big as you can think, go for them, because it is very rewarding to see something come out of your head and then come to life.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about. I wasn't that young. I actually worked for a little while. I didn't drop out of college, so I was, I think, 30 when we actually started the company. But it's interesting because I think early in your life is when you can take the most risks, because you don't have the family, you don't have a job that you worked your way up to a certain point. You kind of have nothing to lose, right? And I was getting to a point where I knew I just met my eventual wife. I knew I was going to probably start a family at some point. And I was kind of like, if I don't do it now, I'm just going to get sucked into, I wasn't doing that well in my career, but like I was, doing well enough that I was like, I'm going to end up just kind of comfortable and not wanting to do something that takes risk and might not work and might fail and might set me back a little bit in my career and financially. And I had very little money saved at the time. I mean, almost nothing. So, but I still knew that was kind of the last chance, the last window I was going to get. And I wasn't going to have time to be a multiple-time failed entrepreneur, but I also knew if I didn't take a shot now, I wasn't going to ever have an opportunity.
Let's look forward for a second. What are you spending more time doing now in the past few months that maybe a couple of years ago wouldn't have even been on your radar?
Well, we just, on January 1st, we completed a merger, became Fulwell Entertainment, we merged Spring Hill with a company called Fulwell. So now I have to we have an office in London, so I'm spending much more time there than I ever have. And really, integrating two companies, two cultures, I've been spending a lot of time on, which is fun. I call it, basically it's marketing, but just inside to your company, of rebuilding a new culture, which I like. I love that, and spending time on that. And then there's projects that we just didn't do. We now have a pretty massive, I think we're the best in the world at live entertainment when it comes to live. We do the Grammys, we did the handoff from Paris to LA for the Olympics, Super Bowl halftime. So I'm spending more time and thinking about things that we can do in the live space, which is a great space, but still having fun. I'm still having a lot of fun.
I mean, this time of year, I spend a little more time than maybe I'd like in state houses. So, but I think overall as a business, for probably the last year or so, but I think maybe in the last 2 years, but it's really accelerated in the last 6 months or so, have really gotten organizational momentum around AI. People are excited about it. I think, ChatGPT and people using it in their personal lives actually helped. They're like, wow, did you know you could do this or that? And so I think it's really, it's amazing to see how much it, I think, will change. And it's starting with simple stuff, like any document that people used to actually read, you don't really have to do anymore. You can get a summary of it. So, there's little things like that just, I think, are starting to take hold. And I'm just fascinated to see where it goes, but we're going to make sure we're at the forefront of it.
Well, I'm going to go to some audience questions here. Before we do, want to do a little lightning round here. Going to toss some things at you. I want you to answer them in 5 words or less. I guess, Jason, we'll start with you. Expectations for the Duke basketball in March Madness this year?
Championship. I don't need 5 words for that one.
There you go.
1 word.
Mav, your immediate reaction to the Luka AD trade?
Chaos is fun.
I like. Jason, you're an odds maker. What are the odds that Cooper Flag goes back to school next year? Set me a market, please.
I think he might come back. I don't know, 40%.
Wow. Oh, that's way more optimistic than I was.
Yeah. I want, maybe that's just me wishful thinking a little bit on that one. It's probably not that high, but hope springs eternal.
There you go. Mav, 5 words. How do you fix the NBA All-Star game?
Define fix.
What would you do if Adam let you do whatever you want with it?
But what's fix? Meaning,
get rid of it. Do something new format.
I don't think it's by my. I assume you're saying fix that a lot of people will watch.
Make it more enticing for players and fans.
I don't think there's a fix.
Okay, I don't disagree with that at all.
You asked an impossible question.
Maybe. Well, maybe I would just get rid of it. Jason, what's a sport that people would be surprised at how much handle DraftKings does with it?
People are surprised in general when I tell them how much comes on the college sports. They don't appreciate it. They think they're way behind the pro sports, but they're not because there's so many games.
That's right. Maverick, we have a handful of athletes who have become billionaires: Magic, Michael, LeBron, Junior Bridgman. Who's the next? Who's someone you're looking at who you're like, this guy has both the on-court or on-field and then also the off-field expertise to do that?
There's a lot of brilliant athletes. Victor Wembanyama would come to my mind.
Gotcha. And then last one here, Jason, for you. What year, if ever, does DraftKings do more money in iGaming than it does in sports betting?
2030.
Got it, 2030. All right, well, I'm going to go to some questions here from the audience. One here going back to the LeBron DraftKings partnership. How do you both measure and articulate the value of that partnership?
I mean, for us, we're very much driven by customer signups and customer engagement. So we're looking at those two metrics. How many new signups do we get? And how engaged are customers that are interacting with the content that LeBron is producing with Maverick? So, that could be different depending on what it is. If we're putting a TV ad out there, it's usually designed for customer acquisition. The social content has some component of that, but is also a little bit more on the engagement side. But it's one of those two things, if not both.
And how are you tracking that back to LeBron specifically? Is it promo code?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of different ways that we track performance. There's, on digital stuff, you can look at direct clicks. You can look at, what people are looking at, engaging with. There's tons of stats you can get from social and digital stuff. TV is a little trickier, but with TV, you can measure response based on looking at the time logs of when TV ads ran and how much of traffic spike you got right after that. And then also you can use coupon codes, which we have like a multiplier. We figured out that, because not everybody types in the coupon code, but if you put a coupon code at the bottom of the ad or whatever, at the end of the ad when you show the offer, we know a certain percentage of people will do it. So we know that if we get X many people entering the coupon code, it's really some multiple of that.
How about you, Mav? How do you value success in a partnership like that?
In a partnership like that, A, is LeBron having fun with the partner. In this case, yes. B, is all the content is different, right? TV is different than social. Is it good? And you can feel it and see it. And for LeBron, are people coming up to him and talking about, seeing you in the DraftKings ad? It's funny, you and Kevin Hart. And then most importantly too, is the partner achieving success of what they set out to do.
A tack on here on the conversation that, Mav, you were having about value conversation. It's actually for both of you. Any rough estimate on, I guess for you, Jason, how much you think legal sports gambling has done in value creation for major leagues, and then Mav, the value of new media athletes, the stuff you're doing with the shop. Roughly how much are we talking about?
I mean, I'll answer mine the same way he answered his what he was talking about before with sports players. I don't know what the number is, but I know it's something.
Yes. Yeah, there's no way to quantify it and put a number, but it's definitely something. And in some instances, it is the thing when you look at, from our standpoint of storytelling, when you look at what Drive to Survive did for F1, right? Most Americans, F1 did not have a stronghold at all in America, but Drive to Survive, which told the story of Formula One racing and wasn't the race, definitely drove value. And I was with Ted Sarandos last week, and he's a bit like, fuck, we should have had that, we should own a piece. We drove all this value and didn't own it. So again, it's impossible to actually quantify it. I guess we could look at, using that example, we could look at F1's media rights value in America pre and post Drive to Survive, but it's definitely, I know it's up, I just don't remember the numbers.
There's a lot of sports media companies, there's a number of gambling companies. How do you guys think about strategies for differentiating what you're doing versus what everyone else is doing in your sphere?
For us, it's really three components. A big one is talent relationships. We have to have the best talent relationships and partner with talent. And in our business, talent being athletes, actors, directors, writers, We have to really super serve the talent. A, we have to make content that moves people, that you can feel, that makes you feel something, that it connects to you emotionally when you watch things we make. You have to love it, and in order to love something, it has to make you feel something. And those two things are big for us. And then thirdly, with our new merger, we're the biggest and best in the world in live. So we know that we get all the first calls if someone wants to produce live, again, whether that be the Grammys or whether that be what we just produced a big event for Delta inside the Sphere in Las Vegas during CES. And then our other category is in unscripted sports. We made Clutch, the show on ESPN. We made Starting Five. We made Captains of the World for FIFA. So we have to really own those two categories, and we have to own them in talent relations and making content that connects to people emotionally and that people talk about and love.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's really, pretty simple. It's customer experience, and that starts with the product. But really, any element of a touch point with a customer has to be as perfect as possible and better than anybody else. And I think, especially in digital products, really you could say it's in any product, but especially in digital products where you have more lower switching costs and more choice, it really gets around quickly. People talk and they say, this is the best, or if there's a few or two or whatever, like these are the best. And I think that people underappreciate the network effects that exist in almost any market because of that. So having the best product, the best customer experience, I think is more important than anything. And of course, you got to do marketing and other things in every little bit, but it really starts with the product.
This isn't an audience question, it's a me question, but I wanted to ask you, Jason, about new competition that you had or maybe have coming up in the futures markets. I know you're waiting on a ruling from the CFTC, but is it your opinion that futures contracts like what Kalshi is doing should be regulated as gambling, or do you think they are a separate product and should be regulated separately?
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to opine on how they should be regulated. I think having clarity that a product is regulated and is being done under a legal framework is good. I think part of the challenge in our space now is that there's a lot of operators, not that example, but others that are operating products that may be questionable on that front. And so I like the fact that there's going to be clarity here, and wherever it lands doesn't matter to me. I just want there to be clarity on how we can operate so that we know the rules of the road and we have the best opportunity to compete in as many places as possible with others that are doing it. And really, I think if you do that, and I talked to this earlier, I feel very confident that we can put the best customer experience out there. And but you got to be able to do it, and you got to be able to have a fair playing field. And so, to me, it's less important how it's done and more important that it's being done the same way for everybody.
Let's do two more here. Going back to the conversation we had at the beginning about the kind of changing role of fan consumption, where do you see it going in 5 or 10 years? If your kids are now on their phones streaming video game, what does it look like when they're adults, or what does it look like for the next generation?
I truly believe if you, as it relates to sports will always matter. You have to, it has to be an event though. Events will matter and be even more valuable in the future. You guys talked about Tyson and Jake Paul, basically two non-boxers, right? A 60-year-old man and a non-boxer, but they eventized it. And Netflix, think of Netflix as like it's like a portal, right? It's like Yahoo back in the day. It's like that homepage. It was there. So even if you didn't plan on watching it, when you open your Netflix, there it was, just like back in the day when you would open Yahoo or whatever. So I think events are going to matter even more. I think sports that are non-NFL, regular season is going to continue to struggle a bit. But if you can make things an event and make possessions matter, every shot matter, every game matter, then I think that is going to continue to get valuable and continue to be what fans want and love and consume. And I think the stories around the events, people will continue to consume also.
Last one here. Is there a niche sport that you guys are excited about, Jason, I guess for gambling purposes and Mav for content purposes?
A niche sport that I'm excited about? I don't know. You guys have every sport.
We have everything. I mean, some of the fastest growing right now for us are the women's sports, particularly WNBA, and also women's soccer. So I actually think, especially with the World Cup coming up, soccer in general is going to get a boost. So I think women's soccer and then also WNBA are two that I point to that really I think are exploding right now.
Yeah, I love what the women's league Unrivaled is doing. I mean, it's not a niche sport, but the form in which that took on a basketball is rather niche, and I love that.
Do you put that in a category, just to close things out, in that category of a group that is giving players, there is equity in it?
They're doing it in a
year
very
one.
smart way.
Yeah, that's more of the model that you're talking about in
Correct.
terms
That's
of
a smart way.
Got it. Well, Jason, Mav, thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks, folks,
Thanks
for
for having
hanging out
us.
with us.